What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Celtics Blog Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Adam Taylor, joined by my good friends, plural, compadres. Today, it's the three-man weave, Mr. Will Weir and Mr. Greg Menakis. And I've pronounced that right because I've been doing it for long enough at this point. How are you guys doing today?
Man, I'm so excited to be back. I haven't been on in a couple weeks, so three-man weave, great way to get myself back into the rhythm of things, and I'm as excited as everybody at Celtics Media Day was.
Yeah, man. New season, three-man weave, back together. Can't beat it.
Yeah, I'm telling you, when you say excited as people at Media Day was, I started off excited, I ended exhausted. I was not pleased by the end of the day because it was just like, yo, every time you feel like you've got a handle on what people are saying and what's happening, there's a new, like, something's coming from the side, and then something will happen with Ben Simmons, and then something's gonna happen with, I don't know, Ja Morant will probably like jump over a building or something, and you're just like, what's going on, dude? Like, there was just so much to keep up with. It was a fun day. I like seeing the timeline for the basketball takes again.
So were you just like sitting on Twitter all day?
Yeah, so like I was kind of moaning about this to somebody earlier today. Like, I had 6 teams give me access to their media Zoom press calls. Not one of the 6 were the Celtics. So I was like, the one team that I want to be in on, like, I'm very grateful. Like, I'm humbled that I had the opportunity to jump in on a few, and I did. Like, I kind of flitted between them as and when. But like the one team that I was like super invested in finding out what was going on was the Celtics. I didn't have access, so I was the same as everybody else. I had Twitter on what where you can like split your screen, so you got half and half. So I had like Twitter on the left hand side, then I had Celtics.com on the right hand side with their own stream going on, and then it was throwing me out of sync because you'd be like, Amanda Pflugrad and Mark D'Amico would be talking to Al Horford, but people are tweeting about, I don't know, Jason Tatum, and I'm just like, well, this is not what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
No, so I had to close down the one
Two
page.
different cycles going on at the same time, and your brain is kind of like cross-functioningly like confusing both of them.
Yeah, so I just ended up closing down that Celtics window. Like, dude, this isn't important. The stuff going on Twitter is the important stuff.
So what were the 6 teams?
So I had access to the Lakers, which was today. I had access to the Sixers, to the Mavericks. I have to put up the others. Who else did I have? The Sixers, the Mavericks. Let me pull them up.
There's some pretty good ones so far, man. These are all teams that have like highly entertaining, plot points for the season coming up.
And you were saying, so for me, I was working all day, so I was like very tangentially involved in Media Day as it was happening. And when I got home, I did my deep dive, and I took the day off of work today, so I did an extra deep dive today. So I was experiencing everything after the fact. I can't even imagine trying to keep up with 6 different teams and the narratives coming out of all those camps, positive and negative. And then you're getting all the crazy stuff happening with the vaccinations and people speaking on that. I mean, that I feel sorry for you that you actually put yourself through that, Adam.
The other teams were the San Antonio Spurs, which is awesome. And then I had the Charlotte Hornets, and then there's one more that I'm trying to find here. So let's just call it 5. Maybe it was 5, and I've added one in my head. 5, 6, wherever we were around that area. To be honest with you, it's like I hopped into a couple, but I feel like an imposter there, right? Because it's not like I know the beat writers or anything. It's not like I'm a big deal in terms of like somebody that's covering the NBA as a whole. Like, I'm very much specific on certain teams. So I was just like, dude, I'll pop in just because it's awesome and I want to say I've been on them. But for the majority of the time, I was solely focused on the Celtics, man. And the speed at which things were coming out at there, like, shout out Keith Smith, because I don't know how him and Jared Weiss were keeping up with how quickly people were talking.
Right.
Dude, like, have you watched the videos back?
Goro with like 4 different arms.
Yeah,
they
like
need to do a masterclass. Have you guys seen like when chefs or like directors do like the master classes? I feel like guys like Keith need to do a masterclass on, like, I feel like sometimes I'll watch something and I'll be like, oh, I got a great tweet for this. I'm going to talk about, Al Horford just said this, and then here's my quick little, 2 cents on it. And somehow Keith sent it out like 5 minutes ago. Yeah, I have no idea how he does it.
Like, when I'm saying, like, have you watched the videos back of these media days?
I've watched some of them back, yeah.
Grant Williams talks at 400 miles a second. Like the dude is so like how fast he speaks. So like I've done an article that come out on Celtics blog today, just talking about like Horford and what players had said about Horford, and trying to transcribe Grant Williams is his quote was ridiculously tough because I like to try and listen and type as I'm listening, and if I fall back, I'll just reverse it. I had to listen to that one quote like 8 or 9 times just to be able to finish a paragraph of what he'd been speaking about. Dude speaks at a mile a minute.
Yeah, speed tweeting and being able to tweet while something is going on, whether it's the interview or even like this applies to games too. I have to wait till there's commercial breaks, or else I feel like if I start tweeting about something going on in the game, I then miss what happens next in the game. And so then I'll wait for the commercial break, and then by then it's like Keith Smith, Jared Weiss, whoever else is like. And like I said, I don't know if they have somebody like that they're dictating this to, that they're doing like
they have a court stenographer just sitting next to them.
Yeah, it's like the Chappelle Show skit where they have like the home court stenographer that can like come with you and write everything back. But like I don't know how they do it. It really is something that I would love to learn.
It's tough, man. Like I've tried live tweeting a bunch of games last season. Like the Celtics had quite a few matinee games. There we go. The word went out of my head. So I live tweeted through all of those, and it's tough keeping up because when you're typing, like you said, I'll be typing out some. I did it in summer league, so I typed out about Romeo going missing for stretches in games. Soon as I hit send, Romeo had that big dunk where he just jumped out of nowhere. I'm like, dude, I've literally just said you. Now I've got to go back, and it's tough, man. It is because narratives, especially during a live game, they flip so quickly.
Yeah, I think we got to sign up for a subscription to Dragon voice recognition so we can just dictate everything.
What's this?
Yeah, what is this? I don't even know what this is.
You don't know Dragon? It's like the classic transcriber for audio.
Both Adam and I are shaking our heads right now.
We can cut that out of the pod.
No, we need that stuff. So for YouTube and stuff, I can use this, right?
Yeah,
you can subscribe though, so it's paid.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like it's like if you're trying to teach a kid,
more commonly known than it is apparently.
I mean, it's like hooked on phonics for kids. If you're trying to teach a kid how to read, like you go to Hooked on Phonics, like back in the day, it's like the same type of thing.
Okay, I do remember the commercials for Hooked on Phonics. Hooked on Phonics, I definitely remember.
Never heard of Hooked on Phonics. Maybe
that's an American thing. If you grew up,
didn't make it across the pond, Adam.
Yeah,
I mean, we learn in phonics, dude. Like
everyone knows it.
Phonics is here too, but like maybe it's just a different website. Anyway, I feel like we're getting too far off track here. We've gone from media day and trying to cover things live to Hooked on Phonics. What a rabbit hole we fell down. Oh, what a hill we choose to die on sometimes. So let's steer this back towards the basketball world, and we'll start with the phonics side of things. Who do you think has the most phonetic name? No, I'm joking. Okay, so look, where do you want to start with this? Because there was a bunch of news that came out. For me, I think that if I was going to choose an avenue to first go down, it would be how much we need to applaud Brad Stevens for his insane mic drop at the end of his media interview on media day. Because just as he was standing up and about to walk out the door, he's like, yeah, Jaylen Brown's been cleared to practice tomorrow. and then just leaves, dude. Just like, here's the live grenade and I'm done. Peace.
Yeah, Brad seems pretty comfortable as Pobo. I didn't watch any of like the actual media room interviews. I watched all of the interviews that Amanda Pflugrad and Mark D'Amico did. So I saw Brad Stevens' interview with them. So I didn't actually see that. But the interview that Brad did with those two was amazing, where he was just talking about how comfortable he is now in his role, and he's speaking so highly of Ime Udoka and how much he thinks that his leadership style is going to translate. So I can imagine it. I can't wait to go back and rewatch that because Brad definitely seems comfortable in his role. And I think every single person on the team that was in those interviews with Pflugrad and D'Amico, everybody looked like they were happy, smiling, positive. The word chemistry was thrown around like 10 different times. People were talking about playing their roles, being accentuators, gap fillers, all these things. And it seems like everybody is singularly focused on doing what it's going to take to get the Celtics into, out of the play-in tournament and back into contention tournament.
Yeah, the synergy throughout the entire media day I thought was interesting in an extremely positive way. To your point, Greg, of how everything felt so aligned and coordinated, despite this being the first day of the new season, there being so many new faces, so many new roles. And I can't remember if it was, I think it was the interview that Brad Stevens was doing. I think my favorite part was where he was like, "Yeah, it was crazy. I traded Kemba like 3 days into the job."
Yeah.
Like he was surprised at how crazy it was of a move that he made, or like that was going to be like his new role, that how early that happened into his tenure. And so I think it was interesting just listening to Brad, talk through, what would happen this offseason, where he's at. And to your point, he looks super comfortable. I think there feels to be a different type of unity in this organization right now, where almost everybody had, similar messaging. And one that I think really stuck out to me was that last year was last year. This is this year. We're over last year. We know like what did or didn't happen last year, and that's in the past. This is a new team. There's a new energy. There's a new coach. There's new accountability. There's new leadership on this team, and that's kind of what everyone's looking to. And that was one of my biggest takeaways, was just how coordinated that entire messaging was from top to bottom, from everybody from the bottom of the roster to the front office.
Do you know what I like about that though? The way everything was so symbiotic was because throughout the last few weeks, since Stevens moved into that Pobo role, one of the biggest keywords, other than financial flexibility, one of the other biggest keywords has been relatability, and it's been about having coaches that are relatable to the players, and it's been about the players being able to relate to Brad Stevens because they've worked under him and now he's overseeing everything, so they know he's doing what's best for the team. But more importantly, the way that symbiosis comes with all these different points everybody's speaking on off the same hymn sheet, to kind of paraphrase things, is because everyone is so relatable. They know that the new coaching staff brought in have a relationship with Ime Udoka. Some of this coaching staff has relationships with, whether it be Josh Richardson, whether it be Al Horford, maybe, who is it? Is it Will Handy? Will Hardy? Whoever.
Will Hardy.
Will Hardy was in Tokyo with
Mhm.
Jason Tatum, so they've built up a rapport there. Everybody seems to have these underlying and pre-existing relationships, either directly with somebody or vis-a-vis one of their teammates, and maybe they've been around or heard about these guys before. So that relatability factor to me has made things feel just like everything has slotted into place because it was designed in such a way that it would be a quick and seamless transition into this new season.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think one of the other major takeaways for me was the return of Al Horford. And Al Horford hits a lot of those marks from his past relationship with Ime in Philadelphia, his past relationship with Jay Rich, who I am 100% going to call Jason Richardson at some point in the near future, because that's what I think of immediately. But his relationship with him from his time in Philly, Dennis Schroeder being, a young guy on his teams in Atlanta. So Al's coming back in. Obviously, he has those relationships with the Jays and Smart. And so, Al's a very seamless leadership transition that not only fits on the court better than with some of the parts that we had last year, but off the court with, being that veteran leader. And I think, I don't know if it was during the first practice or during media day, where Ime kind of threw a jab at Al, where he's like, we got guys damn near as old as me, like Al Horford on the team. And so, really having a veteran leader like Al that's been so connected with these guys throughout their career. And it was interesting hearing him talking about coming back to the Celtics, where he was like, when I left, Jalen was still kind of figuring out like where he's going to be, where he's going to go with his career. He's like, man, Jalen's in year 6. He's a veteran. He's not a young guy anymore that I'm mentoring. I'm here to support him. They keep using the word pillars. Jays are the pillars of this team. And, as Adam the Toolman Taylor can tell you, you need support when it comes to those pillars. And so Al Horford is here to be that support for those guys. And so I think having Al back here, seeing him in the green and hearing him in his in the way that he views his role, I thought was one of my favorite parts about media day.
Yeah, and I think the positivity that they're all bringing, right? Like when you think back to last year and just being on Celtics Twitter, the three of us were on Celtics Twitter all the time last year. Just think about how toxic of an ecosystem that was. And, we don't have to have any more conversations about Kemba Walker. We don't have to have any more conversations about Brad Stevens. Does he have the pulse of the locker room? We don't have to have any more conversations about Danny Ainge. We don't have to have any more conversations about Gordon Hayward's TPE. Like those are the narratives that I feel like 90% of my Twitter feed was last year, right? So now when you think of like all the narratives that are coming out of this training camp, they're all so positive, and they're supposed to be, right? It's day one, it's media day. You're supposed to hear like guys being in the best shape of their lives and all that. But when you compare what the Celtics media day was compared to like the national discourse, especially around the vaccines and everything was so positive in Boston, man. Grant Williams dropped 15 pounds. Josh Richardson, happy to be, on a team where his skill set fits. Al Horford has lots left in the tank. Marcus Smart is finally getting to be in the role he prefers as a point guard. Robert Williams, packed on muscle, understands the importance of staying healthy. Enes Kanter and Al Horford realize the grass is greener in Boston. Like, I can go on, and I'm going to. Aaron Nesmith worked out with Chris Middleton. He's getting deeper into his bag. Romeo Langford said that he is healthy, and it's the first time he's been without injury since college. I know, Adam, you're a little down on Romeo right now, but he said that he's expecting big things. Jaylen Brown's knee is healthy. Jason Tatum's completely recovered from COVID. Like, all these things, man, are all positive. Everybody was kind of like aligned, and I don't know that they like had a meeting beforehand, but it definitely felt very like organically coordinated in the message. And Will use the word synergy because Will's a sales guy, and he talks about like upward mobilities and stuff like that, verticals and all that stuff that I can't even get into. But it seems like the Celtics are like all on the same page, and it starts with Brad Stevens as Pobo, and it starts with Ime Udoka being the leader that we hired him to be.
I mean, you missed one out. We don't have to speak about how much of a mistake Jeff Teague was either. just to point that out there. No,
are we done with our PTSD post Teague stress disorder? Can we retire that one?
No, he won a championship, dude. I'm gonna be scarred for a while.
Yeah, when he was on the court with the Bucks, I was definitely having that big time.
Do you know what though? Like when you're saying like there's no more, and I'm just like joking around here. I'll obviously get my serious hat on in a moment, but there is no more Gordon Hayward TPE discussions. Soon as the Celtics lose their first game, whether that be 10 games into the season, 2 games into the season, it will be 0.03 seconds until somebody tweets out, who are we targeting with that Evan Fournier 17 million TPE? Like, that's just the nature of the beast, right?
Yeah,
like
we still got TPEs. We still got TPEs for
coming
days.
out the wazoo, dude. There's so many of them. But like, that's the nature of the beast. And I think that's kind of the roller coaster that you have to ride as a fan, as an aspiring analyst, or as a player, or wherever you fit within the NBA ecosystem on social media. The part of the beast is everything's going good, everybody's happy. One little hiccup, and 80% of people are going to lose their minds. You see, like, I don't follow the NFL. I saw a team, I think it was the 49ers, threw a touchdown, and people were saying it was a few seconds too early and it cost them the game and all this.
Yeah.
It's like it's the nature of the beast, dude. That's just the way it works. But when you look at the positive vibes coming from the franchise, like the way people were speaking about Al Horford, the way that Dennis Schroeder said, like Al being in Boston after the good times we had together in Atlanta, and me knowing he was going to be able to kind of keep that locker room in check, that was a reason that made the Celtics an attractive proposition to Schroeder. You hear Udoka talking about how cerebral of a player Al Horford is, and how he can spot a pass better than most, and then he can stretch the floor, he can dribble. Everybody just seems to be building everybody up. You heard people talking about Tatum and Brown all the way through. If you hear people talk about, like, Robert Williams made sure that when he was bigging up Al Horford, he also threw in Enes Kanter's name. There just seems to be this real team camaraderie, and nobody wants to leave anybody out. So when they are saying these amazing things about each other, really trying to build each other's ego and build each other's confidence and lift each other up, nobody's name's getting missed out. You hear Grant Williams talk, he wants to talk about Pritchett, he wants to talk about Nesmith. You hear me talk, I usually try and talk about Romeo a little bit. I'm not on the team, but I'm 6'2", 6'3", more 6'3" than 6'2". Send me a contract, I'll be there on a 10-day real quick. And I'll talk about whoever you want me to talk about, to be quite honest. But shameless plug. But seriously, when it comes to that mentality and the way that everyone's already kind of bought in and they're pulling in that same direction, and then you throw in Udoka, that's going to be this crazy, like, I don't think he's going to be a drill sergeant, but he's not going to take no slacking. You can tell that from the way he speaks. Like, he's holding everybody accountable, and they better be prepared to work hard and work hard daily. So that's either going to make or break this positive spirit once training camp starts, because everybody can sound happy to the running laps. You got to sound happy when you finish running the laps. That's when we know that everything's going well.
Do
Yeah, on
coaches
that,
still make guys run laps?
they must at
I don't know.
some
I'm
point.
just
I
guessing,
mean,
dude.
yeah, I mean, I feel like if movies are not lying to us, then yes, they still do at some point. But no,
He's
on
doing
that email note,
suicide runs, dude.
on that email note, I did see an interesting point where he's trying to pick up some of what he learned from Pop in San Antonio, and I guess not necessarily popular to do on road trips, but have individual player dinners with the coach. Typically, coaches will hang out with coaches, players will hang out with players. So I like the idea of Ime kind of going through player by player, continuing to build those relationships, and him taking a little bit of what he learned in each of his stops in Philadelphia with Doc Rivers, being maybe a little bit more of a player's coach at the right times, but then obviously taking some of what he learned from Pop's time in San Antonio.
Yeah. So which of the narratives that I kind of threw out there are y'all like most buying out of day one, right? So I'll give you a couple. So Grant Williams down 15 pounds. Let's start there. Are we buying into Grant Williams potentially being a contributor on this year's team, considering how deep the roster is?
I mean, he said he needs to lose another 8 to 10 pounds to be viable at the 4. Those are his words. So I think I'm buying into the prospect of seeing Grant Williams perform at the 4 and seeing him not get blown by as much or as consistently. Whether or not he actually cracks the rotation as you go deeper into the season, well, that remains to be seen. But if Udoka's going to be running double big lineups regularly, then there's definitely going to be minutes up for grabs, especially for someone like Grant when the team decides to go small or when they need a 3-and-D guy that can just post up in the corner and be a consistent free threat. So yeah, I think I'm buying in. But I'm buying in at like 5 cents a share. I'm going on the pink slips. You can let the Wolf of Wall Street know I'm in on Grant Williams for some pink slips.
Yeah,
Some penny stocks.
I'll join you on the penny stocks. I mean, we talked about this a couple weeks ago with just Adam and I, where when you look at like that power forward spot / small ball 5 spot where Grant Williams is going to live, that's the area of this team that is still most fluid and up for debate as to who's going to solidify those minutes between, if you're looking at the 4 spot, Wancho, Grant Williams, Jabari Parker. I assume Horford's going to play a little bit of there at the 4 in conjunction with Robert Williams. And then Jason Tatum may be your de facto starting 4, depending on what the lineup looks like. So I think those backup minutes for the power forward and the small ball 5 are going to be up there for Grant. And I think he's going to get a shot. I don't think there's any reason, as much hate as Grant Williams gets on Celtics Twitter, like Keith Smith had an article, I think it was last week, where it's like, listen, if you just ask around the league, if you could take right now, you don't know the rest of your roster, but you can just say Grant Williams is going to be your 9th or 10th best man on your team. Most teams are taking that every single day. Like Grant's a fine back end of the bench guy. So I think Grant, really only being in his 3rd year, even though it feels like he's actually been on the team longer, like there's still opportunities for him to improve. So I think this sounds great. It's a good start, and I think he's going to get a chance to take those words and put them into action on the court. So I'll buy him at a penny stock.
So are we considering Grant to be more of the guy that we saw in the bubble where we were like, man, he should have been on the court instead of Daniel Tice guarding Bam down the stretch against the Heat? Or are we looking at him more as like what he played last year, where he was kind of a fringe rotation player, where, spotting up, hitting threes, being reliable, being more of a gap filler? Because I personally, there's still a part of me that wants to believe in the best of Grant Williams, that he can actually be, not an end of the bench guy, but maybe something that you go to in more specific matchups against teams where we could go small ball 5, but Grant being a small ball 5 that is like our go-to small ball 5, I think there's still a chance that happens this year or the year after that. Where are you guys on that?
I mean, for me, I always remember the job he did on Nikola Jokic on that comeback game against the Nuggets. And I think that was one of the best performances he's had since being in the league, to be quite honest. I mean, he pretty effectively shut down an MVP. Let's be fair, Jokic kind of took his foot off the gas during that stretch because he was on a minutes restriction due to a back-to-back himself. It's not like he came in and shut down an MVP that was literally steamrollering through dudes. Like Jokic had done that already by the time Grant Williams came on the floor. It just kind of synced up that Grant got a lot of the plaudits for the job he did as Jokic was starting to wind down for his job well done type of day. But you look at that as like, that's like a good ceiling to have, somebody that you can bring in, put up against one of the better cerebral as Udoka would call it, big men in the league, and say to Grant Williams, get underneath him, play him physical, and then when you're on offense, just find your spot, and if the ball finds you, make sure you're consistent. So I can see where he would be, maybe a third string 3-and-D guy this year at the 4, and then your primary option at the 5 is the small ball option. I can see how that would be beneficial to Grant, because then he's got a very defined role on both sections. So whether he's at the 4 and you're asking him to be that 3-and-D guy, or if he's at the 5 and you're like, hey, we need you to be the small ball dude, we need you to give us that 5-out offense, and we need you to be more versatile laterally and vertically on defense than what Al Horford is, and Rob Williams is taking a seat right now. So I could see that working long term. I think if you had Grant Williams any higher than your 8th man in the rotation, then you're not looking at going deep in the playoffs. And I just feel like that's just the way it is. He's not Draymond Green, and he's never going to be. Which is, nobody else in the league is like Draymond Green. That's why Draymond's
Draymond's an exception. He's not the rule, which I think is what fooled the rest of the league into trying to
for a long time.
Yeah, everyone was trying to find the next Draymond. It's like, yeah, maybe there just really isn't a next Draymond, because he's the exception. He's not the rule. But, with Grant, it's his 3rd year. 2nd year going into his 3rd year. Progression, as we know, is not necessarily always linear, unless your name's Jaylen Brown, and it apparently is. But with everyone else, it's not usually the way it works. So, to just completely write off Grant, I think would be a mistake. I think going into the season, I look at him as, if we're using this as like a baseball analogy, he's that 3rd pitch for a guy. He's not necessarily your go-to 1st or 2nd pitch that you're using to hammer guys throughout the game. But when you need to kind of come in with something a little different, something to catch him off guard, like to your point, who thought he would be a pretty solid matchup for Nikola Jokic? So you go in, you got a Grant Williams that you can plug in. If you're in the right small ball 5 matchup, you can go ahead and put Grant in there. So I think Grant's going to get a chance to shine. He's going to get some moments where he gets some run in there. And who knows? That's one of the beauties of where we're at right now, coming off of Media Day. First preseason game is going to be on Monday against the Magic. It's the first time we're going to have any clue as to what, Coach Ime looks like running this team. We have no idea. You guys did an amazing job trying to go through what you were predicting the substitute patterns to be. We'll finally have a chance to see what that looks like, where he wants to slot guys. And I think that's going to be fascinating to watch.
So, Will, you got to stop doing baseball analogies on this pod. The word pitch to Adam means something very different.
Hey, man, he made a football reference on his own. I think he's catching up. You know what I mean?
That's true.
I'm okay, man. I'm okay. I know what
he's been studying.
I know what baseball pitch is. Oh, you're welcome for my English grammar as well, Greg. Just by the way,
dude, I love it. When you spell practice with an S, I was dying laughing. I saw that. But, this is like the classic Adam Taylor pod right now. Classic Adam Taylor pod. We just spent 5 minutes talking about Grant Williams before we talked about anything else. So I love it. I know I brought it up, but that's why I love talking with Adam, because we talk about like the stuff super niche Celtics. You're not going to find this on like a Bill Simmons podcast. He's not giving you 5 minutes of Grant Williams talk.
Role players are important, dude. I genuinely believe that. I think that whenever I try and like break down basketball and break down like team and stuff, like I'm like, everybody's going to be diving into what Tatum's doing, what Brown's doing, and I get it. We're all super interested in that stuff. But at the same time, your stars are only as good as the role players around them. So if you're not able to break down the role players' weaknesses and strengths, then you're never really going to know what foundations the stars are going to be on. So I do find it super important to make sure that you are diving into every member of the team equally, because they're all going to play a role, whether that be supporting, leading, supplementary. So yeah, man, I like that. But just so you know as well, practice with an S is still technically spelled right.
I like it. I like our English lesson. We gotta do like an English grammar or English lesson corner with Adam at some point. Like each time we just have like a brand new English lesson.
And a dude said to me, like, he was talking to me, he was like, dude, where are you from? I said, England. He went, your English is amazing. Where did you learn to speak English? I said, I'm from England. And it took about 5 minutes for him to realize that English is from England, not from America. And
how inebriated was this guy?
It was Vegas, dude. We was down Old Vegas as well. So it was down like
Old Vegas is an interesting place for those who have not been. It's a very interesting place.
Well, that's like the people down here in Texas who tell the people that speak Spanish, they say, stop speaking Mexican. It's like, no, they're speaking Spanish, dude.
Yeah, some people have a little bit of a disconnect when it comes to where languages come from and which languages are spoken.
Oh no, that's so funny. Stop.
God, we are so off
Anyway,
course here. We are so
yeah,
off
we're
course,
back
but
to
picking up from your last point, Adam, uh, something I'm curious to know from you guys. And we're gonna talk plenty about the Jays and about the major components of this team. But you're right, role players are important. And so yesterday, Greg, you went through a long laundry list of quick hit takeaways that you had from what felt like everybody on the roster. So if we're looking just at the role players, what was your biggest takeaway from either something that was said that they said directly, or that maybe because this team loved talking about each other, which is a really great thing, that someone was said about them? What'd you guys have as a takeaway?
For me, it's Dennis Schroeder, man. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the impact that this dude is going to have. He's a legitimate starting point guard in the league, and to have him as our backup point guard when we're coming off of a year in which Jeff Teague was our backup point guard to start the year, it's such a world of difference. Like, Dennis Schroeder is a legit baller. I think Celtics fans, for whatever reason, don't know how good he can be, but I'm actually super, super high on a closing five of Schroeder, Smart, Jays, and either Lob or Al Horford, because I think that's going to have so much potential for playmaking on the floor, defensive versatility. I think Schroeder and Smart, the fact that they're able to guard two different types of guards. You know, Marcus kind of struggles with the quicker guys, and I think Schroeder is a underrated on-ball defender against quick guys. I remember him guarding Kemba. I know Kemba was a little limited last year, but Schroeder gave him fits. Schroeder was like all over Kemba, picking him up 94 feet. And I think to have that 1-2 punch guarding different types of guards. And then I think Peyton Pritchett's also a better defender than people give him credit for. So Schroeder is the guy that I'm looking for, because he said that he doesn't care if he starts. His first interview, he said, I'm here to win. I'm here to play the role that the coach asked me to play. And I know that some people were worried, was he going to buy into a role coming off the bench, when he has been on record as saying he would rather start, dating back to his time in Atlanta. So he said the right thing on day one. And that's something I'm going to be really interested to see how that kind of, how that goes throughout the season. Does he continue to be happy in that role, or is he going to become a malcontent?
I think for me, like, Schroeder's definitely up there with me as well. Well, I was talking about this on on my YouTube channel earlier today, actually. When Udoka is discussing selflessness and playing selflessly, a lot of people that I've spoke to have taken that as, oh, there's going to be a lot more passing. Guys are going to be more willing passers. I'm taking that a step further, and I'm like, I genuinely believe one of the discussions Udoka's going to have with his team is selfless play also means doing the things that you're not going to get recognition for. It means making sure that you cut to create driving lanes for somebody else. You're never going to get the kudos for that cut that opened up a driving lane, but that off-ball movement is just as selfless as what it is to actually assist on somebody scoring, or to set a screen is just as selfless. So that off-ball role is going to be key, in my opinion, to what Udoka's trying to preach, just based off of what I'm kind of taking away from his press conferences and stuff. And that's going to be the question I'm going into the season with Schroeder is, fair enough, you're saying you're willing to embrace a bench role and you're willing to embrace whatever role the team gives you, but I need to see if you're willing to embrace a selfless off-ball role, that you're willing to make movement and like exert your energy when there's going to be nothing in it for you at the end of it. You're not going to be involved in the play, but your movement could end up in helping open up a scoring opportunity. If we can see Schroeder do that, then I think that we're going to a really solid thing with that backup point guard position, because at that point, Schroeder's an absolute nightmare to match up against, because he can, if he cuts and receives the ball, he's going to have defenders trying to catch up with him. He's going to attack him on the rip through. It's going to be easy money. He likes to get those jumpers around the elbows, especially off pick and rolls. Like, I think 70% of his pick and roll shots come at the elbows around the free throw line extended. So I'm super high on Schroeder, but I have to see whether he'll buy into that off ball role before I've really I've really grasped onto this idea with two hands.
And quick nerd corner, Adam. How excited are you to see a pistol action with Schroeder, Tatum, and either Horford or Lob Williams?
Yeah, like a pistol curl or something, can get like they ran Romeo in pistol curl actions a few times last year, and then they were decoying Romeo as the curler off the pistol and then hitting Rob with a lob. I like that because it rhymes, Rob with a lob. So
That's
I'm
the
super,
origin of the nickname, Lob
yeah, dude.
Williams.
Rob with the love. Like
Adam,
I just
Adam's
like.
just Adam's
He's
just
just getting
discovering
it. He's
English
just getting
people
it.
speak English in England. Lob Williams is because it rhymes with Rob Williams.
No, I mean I knew it already, but it just sounded pretty. It threw me off my train of thought. Like you got, I mean, there's a bunch of pistols. They can run a pistol pitch, pistol get action. There's going to be
Yeah, Pistol Get's gonna be he's gonna be a beast in that,
yeah,
man.
21 keep. They might run some of that stuff. There's going to be a bunch of ways that they can utilize it. But I think that having Schroeder operate as the recipient, so the ball handler or the recipient of dribble handoff actions, is going to be the best way to get Schroeder into scoring opportunities, just because of that explosiveness he's got and because he likes to score off the dribble. That you're going to want to put him in positions where he's collecting balls from dribble handoffs or from screening actions, because that's going to be when you've already got him going downhill and he feels most comfortable. But again, for him to be in a position to receive those type of passes, the off-ball movement needs to be crisp and he needs to buy into that off-ball role. Otherwise, everything breaks down.
Well, my bad, Will. I just one
Oh,
more
you go, man.
quick thing. With the Lakers, they ran that like hit ahead get action a lot with Anthony Davis, either from LeBron or Schroeder, where they would just throw the ball up to Davis and cut hard off of him at the elbow in transition. So I think that could definitely work with Tatum. I would love to see a little bit more hit ahead action from Schroeder to Tatum with Schroeder coming off that. But I'm just excited to see his speed on the court. Because Kemba, if you think back to Kemba 2019 when he first got to the team, he was so fast, man, before his knee really started bothering him. And Schroeder, in my opinion, is as fast, maybe faster. Doesn't have the 3-point shot off the pick and roll. We can stop at the 3-point line, but his just pure speed is going to be a real problem, and I think it's going to be really big for us coming off the bench. Go ahead,
I mean,
Will.
it was his end-to-end speed that I think was part of what drew him comparisons to German Rondo. Obviously his body type is very similar, but when he first came into the league, that was the way a lot of people viewed him. And I think a lot of that had to do with his end-to-end speed. But really what I was just going to say is with everything with Media Day is kind of like, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like, this is one of those things where it needs to sound good because that's step one. Step one is being able to say the right things of what you're working on, what you want to accomplish, and then ultimately the actions are going to speak for that. But you'd rather be in the position where you win the press conference battle and you're saying the right things, your team's excited, your team is connected, the fans are connecting to your messaging, and everything is seemingly working. So we'll see what happens when it gets put into action, but I love what I'm hearing with this team. And that's where, for me, the role guys that jumped out to me were some of the new ones. So specifically Juancho Hernan-Gomez and also Josh Richardson. I loved hearing them actually talk about, knowing what their roles are coming in. You think about this team over the last few years, the back end of that bench has been so young. And through no fault of their own, young guys, when you come into the league, you want to make your mark. You want to find a way to stick around. And we're now seeing a lot of those guys aren't necessarily in the league or don't really have spots, whether it's Carson Edwards or Tremont Waters, or I know Taco's in Cleveland now, but they're still scratching and clawing, trying to show that they belong. Something that you didn't hear from those guys yesterday that I mentioned was, Juancho talked about being an accentuator. And Jay Rich talked about filling the gaps. They're not talking about, I got to make my mark, I'm going to prove what I can do. It's kind of almost a more self-realized, here's what I do, and I'm going to do what I can do best to help with the rest of the team, feeling more established and more confident in their roles. And so I think that's just a world of difference from what the back of the bench was going to feel like and what our rotation could have felt like last year to what we know people or players are already thinking, just from that mindset going into the season. And I'm excited to see if that does translate. Once again, words are words, actions are actions. But saying the right things, feeling like those are going to be the right guys to come in and play those smaller roles, and let the Jays do their thing, let Horford, Lob, Smart, that's really who I kind of consider the core five right now. And then you're kind of filling in the gaps and accentuating those. I love hearing that from the role guys on this team.
Yeah, and you need qualified guys to play within the role, right? If anything, you want people that are overqualified for the role. And last year we had guys that were barely qualified to like put on a uniform. So like Semi Ojeleye, I always talk about Semi Ojeleye.
Yo, poor Semi catching nobody catches a stray like nobody catches a stray like Semi Ojeleye. He doesn't hit any threes,
he couldn't do anything other than catch and shoot. Like everybody on the roster this year can deck the ball on some level, aside from like Enes Kanter, but you're never going to ask him to do that, right? You throw the ball to Juancho, he can pump and go. Grant Williams can pump and create a little bit. He's great with the dribble handoff, with the fake handoff, driving to the basket. Jabari Parker, obviously we know he can score the ball. Romeo Langford, Adam was clamoring for him to be a point guard last year. You know what I mean? Like there's still a possibility that he gets to flex that playmaking gene a little bit. Aaron Nesmith, flex 3-level scoring. Peyton Pritchett, like, dude, we can go on and on again. This roster's so deep. It's crazy how deep it is compared to last year. And Mark D'Amico brought it up, and I think his interview with Romeo, he was just talking about how competitive the practices are going to be and how much Udoka is going to encourage that for guys to earn their spots and earn their minutes. That's going to be huge for this team, because last year it was like, all right, like maybe we'll throw in Javonte Green and he might be able to give us a couple minutes. Like what? Like that's what we were throwing out there. And now we got all these guys that are like legitimate NBA players. Dude, I'm so excited for this season. I think that if everything goes right, this Celtics team could be a real problem in the East.
Didn't Javonte start last season?
Boy, dude. Tatum's boys just catching shrapnel, man.
Yo, Javonte and Semi are definitely not fans of the podcast.
Oh man, I'm telling you what. Yeah, the thing was, like Shemi just catch and shoot all season. Shemi showed a Euro step last year for the first time, like ever.
That was like the first game
Twitter
of the year.
Went nuts. Yeah,
yeah.
It was.
Shemi's got a Euro step.
Yo, Greg and I have been on Semi Island for what was in the Celtics for 3 years, 4 years. Like early on, we were very big into this is going to be like a second round steal here. And then especially when Brad kind of tricked us into being like, oh, Semi's the Giannis stopper. No, you just kept throwing him out there and he was just collecting fouls in a couple minutes here and there. And then we once slowly realized that there wasn't much to it. And so when he hit that Euro step last year, it was like, thank God we didn't leave and we should have left.
Yeah, you could have said like you were semi in and semi out, 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
There it is.
We should have been first ferry off that island, Will.
Yeah, we were part-time workers at the Ogilvy factory by the end.
Did you both have your own Wilson?
Wilson. Yeah. It was just a picture of Taco Fall.
Did that hit right? Did the Castaway reference work?
That did. It missed me for a second. At first, I thought you were talking about like a Wilson basketball, and I was like, I'm not getting this. But yeah, no, that was a go. We were on the island of misfit toys for a little bit.
Yeah, it was back to the dragon voice recognition earlier.
So,
was like, what?
To pull us back just towards the end of the show, like, so everyone's talking right now about how deep the team is, how the young guys are going to be like involved in probably some of the most competitive practices that they've ever been involved in. When Brad Stevens was speaking to the media yesterday, he kind of said the same thing, because I can't remember who it was that asked him outright, but it was basically like, hey, you've brought in a bunch of veteran guys. You were really young last year. Have you made a conscious effort to do this? Yeah. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And Brad was like, no, we've brought in players that we think make us a more competitive team, give us more versatility. And in terms of the young guys, like, we're still quite young. We still have a few young guys. And if they're able and capable of working themselves into a great opportunity, then they're going to have a great opportunity. But if they're not capable, then they will be on the bench with other players that have been unable, and I'm paraphrasing again, like unable to crack the rotation. That's just the way it is, and that's the way it should be, because that's like what's the saying, iron sharpens iron. So in order to become a better player, you need to be practicing against guys that are going to push you, and you need to have a target. You need somebody in front of you with a target on their back, so you know what level you need to get to and then surpass. So I think that this was a masterstroke by Stevens, especially considering guys like Pritchett, who have just, like, if you read any article that The Athletic produced on Pritchett last year, and there's a couple of amazing ones. I think Jared Weiss done one, Jay King done one. No, everyone seems to say that Peyton Pritchett is the most competitive guy since Michael Jordan. He was probably betting guys on lottery tickets from 12 years ago. Like, so Pritchett's going to find a way to be in that rotation, regardless of who's in front of him, because that's in his nature. And it hopefully we start to see some aggression out of Romeo because of that. Hopefully Grant Williams keeps that nice guy demeanor, but has a bit more of a bad boy attitude on the floor. Maybe that brings that there. I think that there were times last year where he started to develop a bit of an attitude, and he was getting in guys' faces if they body check somebody too hard and whatnot. And I think that as a 3-and-D guy, as somebody like Williams that's quite a sturdy guy, like you need to be in that enforcer role, because that is a role that will always find you minutes on a team, or at least find you somewhere within the NBA. So I think we're going to see a lot of developments, both in personality-wise, demeanor-wise, and skill set-wise this year from everybody.
Yeah, real quick on Peyton Pritchett, something that I picked up that I didn't know yesterday was that, through this coaching staff, and I know Ime played in Portland, and I believe he might have been on the coaching staff in Portland. I can't remember quite that, but a lot of these coaches have Portland and Oregon ties. So Peyton Pritchett actually already has kind of what we talked about at the beginning, all the different relationships from Ime and Al and then Brad, and like all the connections that are being made, is that even a guy like Peyton Pritchett going into his second year already has a relationship with a lot of these coaches. Damon Stoudemire was someone that he met, and he kind of talked about how the Portland and the Oregon basketball community is relatively small. So once you hit a certain level, all of these guys start to interact. So he's already been exposed and already has these relationships previously with a lot of the coaches, which you would lead to believe would help within his development itself. And that could be another factor of this bench and of these supporting roles being elevated even further throughout the season.
I've been reading so much content over the past 48 hours, but I think it was Coach Spins on Celtics blog was advocating for Peyton Pritchett to actually be in the starting lineup, which would be pretty interesting because Adam and I are on team Start Neesmith, and they offer a lot of the same qualities, right? They're floor spacers that can spot up and stretch to hopefully 30 feet. Neesmith is a little bit more creative coming off of screens and pin downs and things like that, where Pritchard's probably more just like stretch to 30 and don't shoot off a movement as much. So like they have similar qualities, but like do it in different ways. So I'd actually be pretty interested because, as I said earlier, Marcus Smart isn't great at guarding like the fastest point guards in the league. So maybe you keep Marcus as the point guard on offense, but have him guard twos on defense with Pritchard in there to space the floor and guard point guards, which is possible. I thought he definitely flexed some chops defensively last year. Kyrie torched him in the playoffs, but I think that overall throughout the season, he had some moments where he was competitive. So he's definitely another guy I want to keep my eye on.
Yeah, and drawing the bar at guarding Kyrie, like shutting Kyrie down. If that's the bar we're setting, then I don't know what we're doing here, because
a lot of dudes getting
short. Yeah, dudes are getting torn up by Kyrie. That's the thing. But I agree. I think regardless of who it is, whether it be Pritchard, whether it be Neesmith, whether Richardson gets the nod, whoever it is there, as long as they can space the floor, provide some ball handling ability, maybe play some, like not maybe, but definitely play some decent or high level defense, then the team's going to look good in the starting five. My biggest thing that I've been pushing all through the off season is balance, making sure that the roster isn't top heavy in the starting five so much that your bench unit suffers because of it. And sometimes that means hurting somebody's ego to keep that balance. And I understand we're not talking hockey rotations, so the balance is negated somewhat because it's not a straight 5-for-5 swap, but being able to plug and play guys, sometimes you're going to need to pull 3 guys out at once because the matchups just aren't working. And if your bench is like misorganized, or it hasn't been the balance is kind of all with the starting five, as we saw last year, pulling 3 guys, 2 guys at once and throwing in 2 guys that aren't really NBA level or aren't warm or don't fit with what you're trying to do, that could be catastrophic in like a 4 or 5 minute stretch. You can really get blown out and be going up on an uphill stretch from that point. So I do want the balance to stay there. But one last thing, do you know how many times I've had to question when I've seen Portland, so Pritchard's from Portland and so-and-so's from Portland, and I'm like, is this Portland, Oregon or Portland, Maine? Like which one are we talking about
in New
right
England,
now?
like Portland, Maine, I could see why you might think it would be Portland, Maine. It's never Portland, Maine.
Yeah,
if it's ever about basketball, I don't think there's ever been a good basketball player.
If it's about basketball and something that there's no other context giving you that it's about specifically Portland, Maine, or something in New England area, it's Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon is so much more prevalent nationally than Portland, Maine.
They just put Portland, right? But because you covered the Celtics, you're like, Portland, Maine?
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, Portland, Maine. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I actually remember, like, because now that Greg and I live in Texas, this is a couple of years ago. I was hanging out with that was your sister, actually, Greg. She had just come back from like a bachelorette party or a birthday party. She was like, "Yeah, I was in Portland," and I was like, "Man, you just flew in this morning?" She's like, "Maine." I forgot. I'm not in Texas anymore, where like
Yeah.
no one would ever go to Portland, Maine. So in that scenario, it's one of the few scenarios in which Portland, Maine made more sense than Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, the Celtics try to confuse everybody with the Maine Red Claws, but it's it's never going to be about Portland.
It's the Maine Celtics
I
now.
was gonna say
Oh,
controversial talking point. Now the Maine Celtics versus the Maine Red Claws.
50 minutes into the podcast, I don't think we can open up that can of worms.
No, we'll save that for another day. I love these 3-man weave episodes. I'm going to be quite honest. I like the way that we kind of just go off topic here, there, and everywhere. I'm sure it's frustrating for people listening that are trying to get some when the season starts and there's more things to kind of sink your teeth into. I'm sure we'll be a bit more on topic. But hey, like, the personality is what makes the show. I'm always happy to have you guys on. Do you know what? I'm super happy that we're all back in the swing of things as well. It's been a crazy month for everybody, especially with the off season being so dead. But we're back, we're up and running. Guys, let everybody know where they can find you.
You can find me at Minakis_music on Instagram, at MiniMinnow on Twitter. I'm right now, for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm shouting out my boy who started a clothing line down here in Austin, Texas called United Clothing. So you can get one of these hats. Follow him. I think he just has an Instagram at United Clothing 512. So you can order one of these dope hats. Shout out AJ.
Yep. Collectively, you can find Greg and I together on our other podcast as well, the 617 podcast. You can find us at Green Envy Pod on both Twitter and Instagram. And then individually, if you really want to shout me out, you can go ahead and find me at Wilbon, WILL2Ls, BON13, both Twitter and Instagram. Appreciate you.
Make sure to show these guys some love, man. These guys are awesome. If you want to find me, then I'm literally anywhere social media exists under the moniker of at Adam Taylor NBA. That's the username, at Adam Taylor NBA. Make sure these at Adam Taylor. These episodes are being uploaded to YouTube as well now. So if you're more of a visual person than an audio person, then you can go ahead, watch the episode in full on YouTube. Watch the silly things we do on camera sometimes where we're laughing at each other because we've said something that can be misconstrued or whatever that may mean. As usual, if you've enjoyed the show, that 5-star written review is always the best way to show love. And, if you don't have an Apple device and you can't show love that way, the next best way to show love is to tweet about the show, tweet at us about the show, tell your best friends about the show, your aunties, your uncles, your second cousin twice removed, Uber driver, pizza delivery person, your swimming instructor, scuba instructor, your whoever's captain of the boat that you're on this weekend getting drunk. You just, hey, yo, you need to put this podcast on for everybody. You're going to love it.
And party podcast. Let's go.
Yeah, let's all get drunk and listen to the 3-man weave on Celtics Pod. I'm telling you, it's going to be lit. We'll catch you again on Friday. Everybody stay safe. Have a good day. And basketball's back soon, baby.
Peace, y'all.